Hi, this is Adam at the Astro Imaging channel. Today, Hytham is going to go over masks in PixInsight. For those of you that are arriving for the first time, we do this weekly, and just check in on our Google Plus page, and you can see what we're planning on doing that next week. But right now, I'm just going to hand it right over to Hytham, and he's going to start.
All right. Am I all set?
You're good to go.
All right, here, I'll just go ahead and share my desktop for you guys. Screen share, which one do I want? Not that screen. All right, there we go. So let me know if you guys can see PixInsight. You should see three different images built into the PixInsight, or sorry, at least broadcasting out of PixInsight. So you should see the 12-panel mosaic, the LHS Heart and Soul here luminance, and then the Heart and Soul color.
Yes, we see all three.
All right, brilliant. So let's minimize all three for now. Oops. So I would like to apologize to everyone ahead of time. If my drop off suddenly, and it's because my my PC's been acting real fun today. So as Adam stated, my name is Hytham, and welcome to the Astro Imaging channel. So tonight we're going to be covering a couple of different masks here. I'm going to primarily focus on star masking techniques here. So in my first presentation, what we had discussed was enhancing large-scale structures, and a part of enhancing that large-scale structure, there's a focus, at least a very small focus, on the use of range masks as well as star masks, but a combination of star masks. So we're going to do that today, and we're going to go a little bit beyond range masks as well. So just using the standard utilities that everyone is familiar with, so such as, you know, extracting your luminance, or using a range mask, or using a standard star mask. We're also going to get into some pixel math, little tricks that I've learned along the way from some of the greats that are out there that will be of benefit for people. Now, so let's start moving along here. So if we take a look at this particular image, now one of the things that I had done last week, and I'm going to go over that again, so sorry if I reiterate myself a couple times, what we ended up doing was we created a star mask here for this particular image, because the focus was to eliminate the larger scale stars in the image itself. Well, not necessarily eliminate, but more to dim them out, because the following steps after that were to eliminate the smaller scale stars, which are the tiny images, sorry, the tiny stars here. And as you can see, my system is very undersampled. We're looking at 5 arc seconds per pixel with a reducer here, versus this system, and if we zoom in as well, this is taken in f5. So the stars here, you can see some of the stars look like little squares. So for me, I had to learn how to create masks a little bit differently, and how to do morphological transformations a little bit differently. So, but one of the things that I had noticed was that I had to start being able, or I had to learn how to target stars, and I had to target very specific aspects of those stars. Did I want to just target the halos, or did I want to target the whole star itself, or did I want to protect the whole star? Or other questions that came into mind, a really popular one that bothered me early on was the fact that if I used a luminance mask, the luminance mask gave me the ability to block out the background and then highlight or expose only the high signal areas, so such as the stellar objects and the nebulosity. That bothered me to no end. I could create a star mask that would block the stars, but then it would expose the entire background along with all the nebulosity. So I could never isolate them. And I started thinking of, well, there's got to be a way, and through millions of different iterations, I still couldn't figure it out until I came across a particular function that someone was talking about on the PixInsight forums, and we'll get into that. And it showed me that I can also create star masks through combinations by either multiplying, adding, subtracting the inverse of specific masks. So we'll get started here today. So let's start off with the excuse me, let's start off with just creating, oops, I apologize, wrong one. Let's start off with the basic star mask ability here. And we're going to go over some of the different functions. Now, what I'm not going to do is focus on this entire image, because if I focus on the entire image, this is a huge area. Oops. I'll just grab a small section here. Minimize this out of the way. So here is the window that we are going to focus on. It's a nice, easy, small window. We're only looking at about 1,000 by 600 area here. So let's go over to the star mask. Now, we had discussed some of the options that are used in here. So let's go over them one bit at a time. So in this area here, you have your noise threshold. And I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but as you hover over top of every single one of these, it does give you a small little pop-up box, and it does give you an indication of what it does. So the noise threshold here, if you just hover over top of it, if you guys can see that, if not, but basically what it does is you decrease this number here to include smaller structures, but you can increase the number to, reduce the inclusion of noise, so we get away from it. Now in our case, what I'll do here is we'll just go through the slider just so you guys can see and get an idea of what is included and what is not included as you generate these masks. The working mode here is star mask. This is the one that is the most popular, the one that's most regularly used. Now scale here, scale is awesome because it gives you the ability to further control the size of the objects that are represented in your mask. So as I touched upon previously, every single image is made up of these wavelet planes or wavelet layers. Now the wavelet planes are going to represent different scales or different sizes of objects in every single one of those layers. So let's do this really quick, and I'm going to hold my breath because this was crashing my computer until I did a BIOS update. So extract wavelet layers, get rid of that, hold my breath. Yay, all right, brilliant. So do you guys see those images? Did they show up okay? All right, so
Yes,
let's go to window, let's go to tile these windows. And so we have our original image down here, and then we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I didn't extract the residual in this case because it's not necessary. But as you can see that in every single one of these, we see that the objects are being represented in every single one of the layers. Now, depending on the size of the object itself, it's going to be represented by represented or supported by multiple layers. So let's look at this big bright star right here. All right, now let's drag this over. All right, so as you can see, this particular star here, because of its size, it's represented in every single one of the layers. So it's here in layer 1, 2, 3, 4, and of course 5. And if I were to have extracted the residual layer, we would have seen it in there too. Now some of the smaller stars, you don't see them as we get larger and larger because they're extremely small, and there's no need to there's no need is the incorrect statement, but they will not be supported by the additional wavelet layers because they are extremely small structure in this case. Excuse me. So with now let's close out every single one of these. So with the scale, that gives us the ability to look at, oops, or determine what structures that we want to use in the images. So let's recreate this. I closed it up by mistake. And there we go. A little bit bigger than the last one, but that's okay. So we have our scale here. So default is 5. Now you've got the large scale, the small scale, and the compensation. Now the large scale, what it's going to do, if you hovered over it, again, it'll tell you. Now what it's going to do is if we take a look at some of these stars, so let's zoom in on one right here. You can see there's a little bit of an extended halo that goes around. Yeah, that's good enough. I won't bother. But you can see here that there's a bit of an extended halo around them. Now when you use the large scale parameter, default of 2 will give you a nice little coverage area. But if it doesn't cover the halo and you want to cover a little bit more, you can increase this large scale number higher, and it'll start creating the mask larger and larger just to compensate for that larger area. Now of course you got to be careful with the number because depending on the total scale here that you're representing and your noise threshold and how it's currently set, well, primarily your scale is the focus. You might end up covering an area that's this large to target one star. So sometimes it's best to create 2 separate masks and then sum them together to get that one additional mask in place. Now, if we have enough time, I'll show you guys how to go about doing that as well. We may require part 2 to this. Now, the small scale here is also, again, you can just hover over and it'll tell you. what you're doing is the small scale will, as you increase the parameter, what it's looking for are some of these really tiny stellar objects in here. So a lot of the tiny, tiny, tiny undersampled, beautifully square stars that we've got in our image. So as you increase that image, it's going to increase the mask protection. I apologize, brain dead. For these particular areas. So if you want to include more small scale structures or improve the mask or the efficiency of that mask for the small scale structure, this is the best way to do it, is by increasing this parameter. And we'll show you that again as we move through. Now the compensation here is, again, hovering over. I'm just going to say this for every single one. I apologize if it sounds like I'm being too iterative, but I just want to make sure everybody does see that or gets it. This is going to, and it says here directly, is the number of wavelet layers for small scale small scale growth compensation. So the larger the value it's going to have, you're going to increase the growth of small scale structures in the mass, such as the tiny little stars. I use this one rarely, but if you do need to compensate for the small scale just by increasing the number, you could do it. Or if you want to eliminate the growth of the small scale structures, you just set it to 0, and that is something that I did last week. Now smoothness is real interesting. Now what I did last week was I ended up dropping smoothness down a little bit and setting to binarize, and we'll go over that in a moment. Now smoothness is going to determine the smoothness of the mask itself. If you have too little smoothness, you're going to create a harder edge that is going to be around the mask, and it's going to create a halo-like effect. It's going to look like a panda eyes, I guess would be the best thing, or look like a ringing artifact that is introduced into the mask because you've got such a hard edge around the side. Now, if you increase the parameter, what you're going to end up doing is, and it's currently set to a default of 16, what you do is you start smoothing out the edges. So that way you can focus your concentration or focus your efforts on the brightest region of that star. So typically it's the core of the star. But you also have to be careful, because if you use too much smoothness, if we start going up and up and up and up, like into the 20s, your mask is going to lose a lot of its strength. So you got to be careful, because you don't want to have too much smoothness and then the mask is not going to be effective. And if you have too little smoothness, well, you're going to start introducing additional artifacts. Now people are going to ask, one question I know that's going to come up is, well, how do you determine what is the right amount of smoothness? I would personally say there is no right answer. I would say that trial and error, given your mask and what you're trying to accomplish. Because let's use this as an example. So if we look up in here, there's some nice extended nebulosity that is extending away from the heart and soul. So what you want to do is, if you create a mask that is too hard, you're going to end up affecting this structure, and it's going to look pretty gross, and the stars will as well. So it's just trial and error. Create small little previews like I have done here. Test out the mask to see if it's effective. And if it looks right and the smoothness is right and you're protecting the stars, then great. That's the mask you want to go with. So just give it a little bit of a shot. Now the aggregate function here I have never used. So what this will do is, and I find this one interesting because I understand what it does, but I've never had to use it. Now if there's anyone out there that has used it, please feel free and write a comment on the YouTube video. But what it does is it takes an aggregate of all the wavelet layers, or all the wavelet layers that represent or support a given object, and it sums them together, and it gives you the final resulting mask. Again, I've never used it myself, so if anyone has, please feel free to tell us. The next one here is Binarize. Now Binarize is cool. So Binarize I used last week. Now Binarize, when you're using it, and I should have touched on this prior too, so whenever you're generating a mask without any of these selected, the brightness of the mask itself is going to be determined by the number of wavelet layers that support each one of the stellar objects. So the more wavelet layers that a single one of these objects, particularly this bright guy right down here in the corner, he is going to be found in every single one of the layers, and the brightness of that mask, or the strength of that mask, is going to be determined on that alone, without all of these selected. And then combine that with the smoothness, that will determine the strength of said mask. Now once you get to Binarize, Binarize is cool. Well, everyone knows what binary is, right? It's 1 and a 0. In this case, the mask is going to be generated as an all-white mask, and the only thing that will determine the strength of that mask will be the smoothness factor. So no matter that this particular stellar object right here is represented in all 5 layers that we had extracted previously, he is going to get the same value as this little guy down here, or one of these tiny little small undersample stars that may only be supported by 2 of the wavelet layers. So you use the smoothness factor to determine the strength of the mask itself. So everybody gets an all-white mask. You use smoothness to determine it, then you can move on. Contours is cool. So contours, I have never used it. Again, it's one of those things that I've never used, but it's something that I had seen that was recommended on the Pi forums whenever you're, whoops, here, let me scroll down a little bit. Whenever you're trying to enhance some of the dust features. I haven't used it personally. I would like to. It's used in combination with a morphological selection. So, or even quite possibly in erosion if you really wanted to within the morphological transform tool, so MT tool here in PixInsight for star reduction. Contours, what it's doing, it's targeting, or it's focusing its efforts here on looking at the contour of the star, so the outer edges of the star itself. So you're looking for the halo. And it's going to protect the internal region. So when you generate the mask, and I'll show you what it looks like little black eyes, and then with a white ring surrounding it. And the invert function, invert means just that, is just inverting the mask itself. So if we highlight over top of it, it says invert the mask. Optional inversion is the very last step of the mask generation process. So when you generate your mask, you can select this invert option, and it's going to invert the mask that you have just created. Now let's move on down here to this area. This is another area that not many people use. I didn't use it myself until I talked to Rogelio, RBA, about its use and its function and whether or not he employed it. And I played with it myself. I couldn't really understand or figure out other than, yeah, it clips the backgrounds and it really isolates the features, but that's exactly what it's for. And I just couldn't wrap my head around like when I would use it. And now I don't. Now I think for pretty much every mask that I generate, I will make an adjustments to the shadows and midtones if I'm trying to get a very specific or very precise mask that is made. So what we can do here is, as we go through, you can clip your highlights, you can play with the highlights as you see fit, the shadows and the midtones, and I'll show you what each one of them does as we make adjustments to it. Now, there's 2 other things down here, are the truncation and your limit. Now, these are really, really interesting because what they do is they define upper limits, well, at least, the limit function here defines an upper limit. Now, if you're following along and just hovering over top of it, it'll tell you this value will multiply the mask, so it can be used to impose a maximum mask value. If mask inversion has been enabled, multiplication will take place prior to the inversion. Now, what this allows you to do is that you can set a limitation on the inversion function. So if you want the inverted mask to be less or not as strong as you want your non-inverted mask, that's when you start playing with the limit here. So I tend to leave this as 1. I've never adjusted it. I haven't seen a need to quite yet. I'm sure, like with any tool in PixInsight, at some point or another, you're going to discover that, yes, it's going to be needed. Now, the truncation here is also interesting. I've never used it, and my guess would be, based on the description, it says here, highlights truncation point, decreased and improved protection in the cores of the mask structures. So what you could do is by truncating this, and as you want to protect the cores, you can truncate them further to increase the protection of the brighter areas. So it sounds like it's fairly self-explanatory. These are 2 things that I have not quite used. Even highlights, though I understand its purpose and its function, I've never used it myself. I tend to focus on shadows and midtones. So with all of that said, what we can do is we can just start moving on and taking a look at what the masks can and cannot do. So let's do this. Now, we're all familiar with the standard features here. So what we'll do is we'll generate a first mask, and I'm going to make this even smaller so that way we do not affect the video stream for any of you out there that are watching. So we'll take a whoops, that scared me for a second. I ended up minimizing the window. So let's take a look at this little area right here. There's a nice little open cluster. And there is no way that this is going to affect this system. This is very small.
I don't see
It
your
should not affect any of my voice entry. If it does,
Hytham, we're not seeing your window right now. You
thanks.
might have to go back to screen
So what
share.
we'll do is we'll generate the initial mask, and then we just use this as a comparative. So the standard mask here, we have a good idea of what it's going to do. So we know that since we have a noise threshold of 0.1,
Hytham,
we're going to include a lot of the small structures, so possibly even some noise within this. You generally don't want to create a mask for your noise. Working mode is going to be left for star mask. Let's set the scale down here to 3 so we don't include everything. Oh, actually, you know what? Let's leave it at 5. I apologize. Everything here will be left at the default because we want a nice control.
Hytham, are you there?
Hytham, can you hear me? Hytham?
So, you guys can see that mask now.
No, Hytham.
Not exactly the greatest mask in the world. As you can see, it's not going to protect my individual stars very well because of the high number of
Hytham, can you hear me?
Stars that are in this field. It's a very dense field. So if we take a look at this mask and how well it protects, you can see that it is not protecting a lot of the smaller scale structures in here. It's kind of leaving everything exposed because we're only running with a 5 scale here. So it's not the greatest mask in the world. It's going to leave some pretty ugly artifacting and probably start artificial.
Hytham, can you hear me? Hytham, can you hear me? Hytham, we cannot hear. We cannot see your screen. I just wanted to tell you. I'm trying to mute you, and now I have to give you back your mic. But I'm hoping that
structures here in the image itself.
It didn't.
So we'll set this one aside for now.
Hytham, can you hear me?
Star mask.
Hytham,
now I want to focus on including some of the mid-size structures, but I want to eliminate a lot of these small-scale structures. I really don't need them. Well, what we can do is you can bump up this value here. Sometimes you start off at 5 and
ask him to, or can you hit him like through Google?
Bump the scale to about 6 or 7. Decrease. Yeah, if you just decrease, and I should also mention, you can just decrease compensation to 0, leave small scale to 0. And we'll just leave the smoothness here set to 16. We'll
Hytham, we can't see your screen right now.
To get an idea of what we're going to do. So we're targeting, as I stated, we're going to try to target the mid-size structures in here, not including some of the larger ones.
I think I got him.
So, looking at this, it didn't really improve very much over our original star mask. So there is it's a little bit better, and it did help somewhat. But as we can see, what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to increase this noise threshold a little bit more and increase the size of the scale structures to really target what we want. The other thing that we can also do is we can start attacking the shadows and the midtones. So, again,
Hytham, can you hear me? Hytham?
Let's increase this to 0.5. Increase this to about a 7. And let's bring up our midtones and our shadows of shadows. Let's start this. So we're getting a little bit better, but it's still not exactly what we want. As you can see, if we were to apply this mask, my phone is absolutely going nuts, so I apologize.
That's me.
Hytham, can you hear me? I don't think he can hear me either.
You guys can't see what I'm doing?
No.
No.
You need to screen share back and you can't hear us.
Hello?
We can hear you. I don't think you can hear us. I think he knows.
Nope, I can hear you guys now.
Oh, you can hear us? Yeah, okay. We can't see your screen.
Are you serious? What happened?
Don't know.
When you flipped over, I think when you minimized, it did it.
Oh, you gotta be kidding me. All right, my apologies.
It's okay.
Start screen share. It actually disabled the screen share. Oh, son of a gun. All right, so can you guys see this again?
Now we can, yeah.
All right, blasted. Sorry, guys. I apologize to everyone in YouTube land. I am a total tool for not catching that. I was wondering why my screen stopped flickering, because it always flickers when I have a screen share, and it stopped, and I thought, oh, all right, good, caught up. Anyhow, I'm a tool. So let's go on. So this is our control, and that's why you guys were laughing, because my phone was going off as you were messaging me. Holy crap, Hytham, caught up. All right, so here's the control. Here's the star mask that we tried to the second rev, and here's the third rev. So this is this third rev. We included a little bit more scale, increase the noise threshold, and then brought up in the shadows and the midtones significantly here. Now we can still see it's still not going to be the best. This here, this third star mask is what's applied currently to this guy up here. And you can see that it's not all that great. So if we invert the mask here to cover the stars, you can see how it's covering and it's leaving all these really weird gaps. Not the best star mask in the world. So we can bump this up, bring this up to 0.8. And that's much better. Not perfect, but much, much, much better than what we had previously run. So as you can see that as we increase the scale structure, we start to focus more on the larger stars. So you can see that here more and more of the larger stars, and you can take a look at them one at a time. You can see this one's right there, this one is over here. And why do that when I can just do this? And there we go. So we lost a lot of that worm-like behavior, and we're focusing more and more on the stars itself. Now we can get it better and better because we can exclude a lot more of the structure by doing this and bumping. I want to just type it. So 9 and 9. And there's the next iteration here. So you guys can still see my screen, right? You can just nod. All right, cool, brilliant. Just making sure. I'm going to check periodically now because now I'm completely paranoid. So, applying this mask here. Invert the mask, and you can see how much different it was than before. So let's do this here. Let's clone this image, and let's start with the control mask, which is the default parameters. We'll move it over here. Set this aside. Bring this guy up. Oops. There we go. And you can see the difference that the mask made here. Let's invert it. So you can see the difference in the mask, right? The quality's improved significantly. So by targeting the exact scales that we want, we can focus our efforts on those particular objects, or those stellar objects in question. Now, what we want to do is you take a look at these individual stars. Now, you want to look at the smoothness. Now, how well is it protecting those objects? So let's focus in on, let's get rid of this, because now we can see that the control here is a horrible star mask. It doesn't give us what we want. And in fact, even this one doesn't. I would probably generate a little bit better one, bump it up to 0.95. You know what, and let's just go ahead and do that. Move that mask. I'm working with a new mouse, and it is incredibly sensitive, so my hand-eye coordination and motor skills are trying to get used to it. All right. So this is a way better mask. Now you can even see the differences just by bumping it up here, by clipping the shadows and the midtones even further. You can see how we've isolated the structures and eliminated a lot of the small scale features. So you could even increase the noise threshold if you wanted to. I find it easier at times just to go ahead and play with the shadows and the midtones and just leave the noise threshold to a 0.5 typically, and then increase the scale typically, anywhere between 7 to 9, sometimes 10 in this case, as you can see. And let's go ahead and apply it. Invert it, and there we go. We have a much better mask than what we did before. So we can focus our efforts on the small scale and then just target the big scale. Or, depending on how you want to look at it, we can go this way, and we focus more of our efforts here on the stars itself, so on the much larger stars. And if you take a look at it, so you can see here the large scale is set to 2, and you can see how far it extends here around some of these stars. So it's large enough to cover some of the halos of the larger stars. So let's do a remove, add remove, and focus on this guy right down here. So you can see it's missing some of the halo. So the way to compensate for that is simple. Bump this up to large scale here. Now let's do this. So let's close some of these windows down. We'll keep the control up. We'll generate a new mask now with a scale of 3. And then that way you guys can see the differences between the scale of 3 versus that of a scale of 2. I generate a clone. Put this over here. Oh my gosh, sorry. Get that out of the way. Let's apply this new star mask here. And apply this star mask here. And it didn't do too much. I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but it did increase it somewhat, but not enough. So it looks like you might have to end up bumping this one up significantly to really cover that outer halo. So we could probably go to 4 or 5 here. Let's regenerate the mask one more time. And that's a much better job. So it did increase it here a little bit more. So it looks like with this particular one, we're going to have to, keep bumping it up until we include the entire halo, if that is what you're after. And again, that's if you're targeting the very large-scale structure. So and if you are, yes, please keep compensating with that with the large-scale structure or making the modifications to that. So this is what you can do just with this. These are just the basic parameters. Now, we haven't even touched upon things like the binarize or the contours. Now, what I'll show you, because we did see what the binarize did, we'll just jump right to the contours. Oh, actually, before I do that, let's do this instead. So let's close the mask on these two. And I'll keep that one open just so we can see it before and after. Now, let's generate a mask that has got varying smoothness. Now what we can do is let's decrease the smoothness here. So we'll show what insufficient and exaggerated insufficient smoothness will look like. Apply it here. And you can see right away how much different it is. So let's bring these up here. That was a bad idea. Let's do this. Bring these up side by side. And I'll focus in on a star, so that way you guys can see the differences. Now, I'm not sure if you can see how smooth it is and how hard it is, but what you can see that the edges here are significantly harder than here. So we can see that there's much more convolution that happened here in this mask because we had a much higher mask of around 16. I tend to target around 12. Now this is exaggerated here down to 6. And we'll show you what it looks like when we apply it to the image. And we'll show you what this looks like on this side, the other mask in contrast. So now you can see So you can see the differences in the mask and how strong they are. Now if we you can really see the difference at this point. So you can see that here, the edge of this particular mask, you can see how hard it is. It just comes abruptly to a dead stop. It doesn't give you a nice feather such as this one, where the intensity increases as you go further and further out from the center of that stellar object, so from your center point. So you get a nice decreasing mass. So that way it looks like a nice gradual transition from where you want it to focus your processing in into the surrounding areas. We know this if you use Photoshop. You feather, you do an extremely high feather, then you can smoothen it out so that we get a nice transition so people can't see your lines in a mosaic. This is the same thing here. Now, if you think about what would happen if we started adding brightness or a curves function or even a transform against this, we're going to start seeing holes punched into the nebulosity or ringing artifacts. So you can see how hard it is around there. Now, some people might ask, well, why would you do something like this? Again, it's what is it that you're targeting, or what is it that you're doing specifically? So every single one of the masks that you generate is going to have a very specific function. So in this case, what I would do is, if this is what I wanted and I really wanted to protect the cores really, really hard, I could then just add a convolution function to this after the fact, and I find, this is me personally, now someone may correct me if I'm wrong, but I use convolution to masks like this that are generated. I find that I have far more control. So if we were to bring up the convolution process here, oh my gosh, that's right, brand new instance. Did someone just message me? Nope, looks like
No,
they're still
you're fine.
Okay. I thought I heard someone message me, I apologize. So let's go back. screen is still up. So convolution, add to my favorites. Double click, bring that, bring up the convolution. Oops, bring it over, set it to maximum. Let's get an accurate representation. And then you can start playing with the standard deviation or the shape of the star. So if you start adjusting here, you'll see some slight changes. I'm not sure how well you guys are going to be able to see it, but if you start making adjustments to the standard deviation, you can set the shape. So set the shape to around 5. And then once you start adjusting here the standard deviation, that's when you start seeing how much smoother the mask will become. So I'm not sure if you guys can see it, and I really hope you can, because if the stream isn't too high quality, but it's very obvious on my screen. I could end up replicating that star mask that I created here by using the default parameters with a smoothness of 16. I can replicate it here by using smoothness of 6 with the remaining parameters remaining the same, and then you can come close to what you had over here. But you can make it even better by, depending the amount of standard deviation that you apply to your star, you can decrease the hardness around the outer edges, but you can get a more focused mask if you wanted to use it. So that is one option or one way of doing that. So any questions so far? Because I've spoken for quite a bit. I just want to make sure if there are anybody that's got questions regarding what we've been doing so far, please feel free to speak up or let me know of any additional things or additional comments that you might have regarding the star mask.
There haven't been any questions so far. I did just want to mention to you, Hytham, that when you hover over one of the boxes that gives you the description, it disappears for us.
Okay, cool, because I'm going to have to share my entire desktop for that to work then.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is fine, and I can do that so that we, if you guys...
Actually, only over the... I think it's only over the boxes when they're giving you the actual description.
Yes, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what. Yeah, I would have to share my entire desktop to do that, and I'm completely fine doing that. So if I want to, I will go ahead and do so just to make things easier, so people can see that. If you guys really care to see that, it's really not a crucial part of it. But so no questions from anyone out there regarding what we've covered. It's been pretty basic so far. There's going to be some pretty cool stuff coming up in a moment with Pixel Math.
There might be one question coming in. From Michael Miller. I have my biggest issue be bright DSO structure.
So could we elaborate further on that, Mike, if you don't mind, please?
Mike, I can unmute you. I'm sorry, I have you muted just when you came in. Give me a few secs. There you go. You're unmuted. Michael, can you hear us?
Assuming he has a mic.
Assuming he has a mic.
Oh, he doesn't have a mic hooked up. All right, so if you don't mind, could you just please expand a little bit more on what you say? So you say your biggest issue might be the bright DSO structures? So for the other users out there, what he's saying, he's giving an example. So he has a NGC 6960 NHA. With a very strong signal.
Yeah, I can understand that, how the star mask distinguishes between bright areas and stars, because I've seen that happen.
Okay, so we're talking about the signal around the stellar object itself. So we're talking about, say, extended nebulosity. Would you agree with that point, Adam and Mike, if that's correct? Yes or no? Because that's what it sounds like that's being described to me. So we end up picking up the extended nebulosity as a part of the star mask generation.
That's how I'm reading it. I just want to wait for Mike's confirmation, or at least see if that's what he's thinking.
And what we can do is we can focus on, so let's close up some of these windows. Yes. Yes. So we can bring up something with a lot of signal because this particular image does not have a whole lot of signal in it. So let's bring up my 12-pane mosaic here of the Cygnus region. And this bad boy's got a lot of signal. Let's pick a star. So grouping of stars right here in this area. So that should be a large enough area. Let's pull that out. Close this for now. Move this up here. Okay, so it's picking up some of the filamentary data. Okay, so with that, what I tend to do is, so let's, now Mike, while I am going through and just using this as an example to see if I can replicate what the issue you're having, do you know what parameters you're using as a part of the star mass generation? So what I'll do is I'll just run this with the default and we'll see what it looks like as it comes out. Now if we zoom in here, I am not seeing a whole lot of the filament data being picked up. So the star mask here was generated quite well with just the defaults. Looks like up here, up in here as well. I'm so highly undersampled. So it looks like right here you can see some of the extended halo that's caught. Maybe around here as well. Now how can we fix that would be the question. So for you guys that do have mics, Adam, if you just want to unmute them, unmute everybody. My question to everyone out there with a mic, or mic yourself if you want to, you could just type it in. Now what would be an idea of you guys would have to further isolate some of these objects? How would you go about doing it based on some of the descriptions?
I would think increase the scale, but I'm not quite sure.
So what does increasing the scale do again? So increasing the scale is going to target very specific objects. So by increasing the scale, what we're going to do is we're going to end up including larger and larger structure here within the image itself. So by increasing the scale, so how much would you increase the scale by? So we're currently set to 5. What would we bump it up to?
I'm not sure, but I remember when you were describing it, I thought you would actually want to do the opposite. So that's why I said increase the scale, and I think you said push it up to 11 or 9, 10, 11. I'm not quite sure though.
Yeah, the scale structure here. So it depends on what you're targeting. So again, the scale structure is going to include the number of wavelet layers for the total structure detection, right? So the larger number of scales that we have, the larger number of objects that are supported by the number of wavelet layers here will also be included. So this is scale structure of 5, and if we bump this up to 8,
All right, yeah, so it's going to include more of it, and that's not what we want to do.
Absolutely not, because as you start increasing that scale, that's going to do really bad things. So as you can see, so here's a really cool trick. Now if you guys want to see the differences, now as you can see just by looking at the image itself, you can see that there was the inclusion of the brighter filamentary data that is surrounding it, as Mike was asking. So that's the last thing that we want to do. Now here's a cool little trick. You can go into Pixel Math, and we can do something as simple as, let me rename these here really quick because I absolutely hate, I realize the irony behind this, but whatever. If we do SM2 minus SM1, oh, you little jerk. Create a new image. Call this R for result. Let's bring it up. And here is the difference between them. So
That's
Pixel Math is your friend.
Then, right? That's showing the additional filament, and when you added the scale, that's showing the additional filament that was pulled in, right?
Exactly. So it's showing the differences between the two masks that we had. So this one here on the right, on the left, whoa, you guys are going to trust me to teach you about this if I don't know right from left. So on the left-hand side, this is the original mask with a scale of 5. On the right is what we did was by increasing the scale to 8. And here's the result between the two. So you can see just by using pixel math, and it's an extremely simple equation, as you can see, we take the secondary mask, subtract it from the original, and we can see what the result and what has been added to the mask with the inclusion of increasing scale. So by increasing the scale, we're increasing much larger structures, because we know that a lot of the extended nebulosity is going to be the larger structure. So how do we isolate this? So let's try something different here. Let's clip the shadows and the midtones a little bit. Oh my gosh, it is so hot up here, guys. I'm sorry. I might have to get a drink of water for a second. Oh, shoot. Oh, wrong one. What was I doing? And here we go. Here comes Hytham's brain malfunction due to heat exhaustion. Now, what did it do?
Added more.
And we still have the same amount. Why?
Because the scale
Can
is
anyone answer? Sorry, go ahead.
the scale is the same. The scale is still at 8. From
Yep.
what I can see.
So as you can see here, we didn't really do anything. By clipping the shadows and the midtones, it didn't help with this issue. So what you want to do is, as you're doing it, you really want to focus on the size of the scale and making adjustments here. Again, right, the lower you go, you're going to include more small scale structure, and if you increase this number here, you're going to include far more larger structures. So I tend to leave this just at point. Whoops, let's go back to a 0.1. And decrease the scales here back to a 5, because the original scale structure here gave us a pretty decent star mass to begin with. What we can do is, so let's close out these results. Close out these additionally generated masks. Yes, you can go away. And this one, leave this one up. So we'll leave it at 5, leave this one as, let's bring this down to about 14. We've increased the shadows here.
What about reducing the larger scale down to 1?
So this is just structure growth. So this one here, is this what you're referring to?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll show you the differences between that in a second. So the mask was a little bit brighter, the shadows and midtones. We still this way. Yeah, we still got some around here, so decreasing this mask a little bit, decreasing the scale. Now, the question was, what about large scale structure? Oh my gosh. Now what this is going to do here, the large scale structure, as I said previously, what it's going to do, it's going to increase the size of the mask. And if you hover over it, it tells you exactly that. It says increase this parameter to apply mask protection to larger regions. So the focus here is that we don't want to increase the size of these masks, because the large scale mask is going to increase this mask by increasing the diameter.
No, I was saying reduce it. Reduce the scale. So okay.
Okay.
So
Yeah,
it's the opposite of what you're saying. Then you would make it smaller.
Yeah, you would just make this smaller, so it has the opposite effect by decreasing the diameter. Because the biggest thing that we want to achieve is not including the large-scale structures of these large scales. So I guess the good thing to do here, so let's do this. So if we want to go back to, say, 7, and let's bump this all the way up. Let's go even further. Let's go 8. 8. And let's get rid of that one. Yes. Close that as well. Ooh, I don't know about you guys, but it's over 100 degrees here, and it's been absolutely insane. So here you can see our resulting mask. So by increasing the parameters on the shadows and the midtones, and this is something that I had touched on previously, we've been able to eliminate a lot of that structure that we had seen before. So when we left this at, and my apologies, I should have left this original one open. So let's recreate this one. This won't take long. And here we go. So if you take a look at this mask, you can see right up here, and let's bring this up. And there we go. So we could take a look at this region. You can see that that additional filamentary structure, that extended nebulosity, is no longer included because we've clipped the shadows in the midtones area. Now by doing this, you can make adjustments to your mask, and then you can just by further adjusting the scale, you can get the objects that you want and focus more. Now, I know the question always is, well, how do you know what's right? Trial and error, unfortunately. Now, of course, one of the guys at PixInsight may tell you there is some mathematical way of doing it, and you need a calculus-like function in pixel math, and you can get exactly what you want. It's super easy. I'm going to say that it's through experimentation. Now, you can see here that just by making the slight adjustments to shadows and midtones, we're able to generate two different masks with the same scale, and all the other parameters were remaining the same with the exception of large scale. So I'm going to, for the sake of science, let's do this, so that way I'm consistent. Whoops. Oh my gosh, I'm an unbelievable tool here, guys. I apologize. I think I had this set to 0.8, correct? 0.8?
Somewhere around there. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a very easy way to determine that. So star mask 2, take a look at that. So it was set to large scale of 1, 1, 2. All right. I'm ridiculous. My apologies, guys. This is what I get for trying to fight with a bad PC all day long and not being prepared as I should be, but here we go. All right, that's much better. Let's get this so we get focused in on the right area. And science. No consistency. I'd be fired from a lab in 2 seconds for this. All right, my apologies, gentlemen. So there we go. Much better. Now we have a mask that was generated with this, with at least similar parameters up here. So we have the same scales on both sides set to 7. Large scale 1, 1, and 2. Smoothness both set to 13, but the differences between the side. This one had a shadow point set to 0, whereas the midtones was set to 0.5. But in this case, on the right, we've made adjustments to the scales were made the same. So we're still targeting very specific structure, but by making modifications. I'm starting to stutter. By making modifications to the shadows and midtones, we were able to focus and eliminate that extended nebulosity in the area. Now, I hope that helped out with that. Now, what we can do is, let's take a look at the differences really quick. Star mask underscore 2. My apologies. Star underscore mask 1. Mask 2. Gives us the result. I went the wrong way. And there we go. So you can see the differences here between the two masks, what was included in that first result. So I hope that answers your question, Mike, and if it's not, please speak up, type, tell me I'm a tool, and we'll get it sorted.
Hytham, Mike did share an image on Dropbox of his, and I went and looked at the image, and I think you did answer his question.
Okay.
Oh, Mike has his headset hooked up, so he might be coming on board. But I think he answered his question. If not, we'll try and take care of it in the final follow-up or Q&A or whatever we do.
Yeah, sure thing. Yeah, if you we can. So I guess we can just move on from here. Then we can just start talking about some of the other pixel math and some of the other funness that you can actually do here. So let's close out these star masks and let's get to the next phase here, where we can start the combination of star masks. And I'll leave that open for now, just in case. So we'll use both of these here as our example. We'll leave pixel math and the star mask open. So we'll reset the star mask again. So now what I want to do is I want to protect. I really want to focus on the nebulosity and block out the stars in this particular image here. So we don't have very many small, so we do. Gosh, sometimes I absolutely hate my setup, and I love it at the same time. But using this image here as part of the preview, we've got a lot of the small scale stars in here. So we want to generate a star mask. We're going to target, say, the medium-sized stars. We want to eliminate some of those tiny ones. Let's say up this way. Let's bump this up to about a 7 or 8. Let's, again, set this to 0. We want to do a nice, generally nice smooth mask around 12. We won't do contours yet, and I'll bump this up to a 0.5. Oh, man. I am now starting to get old because I used to be able to do that with precision, and now I hesitate. All right. Generate our mask. We have this star mask, and it's a pretty good mask. It's just about what I wanted to target. So we've got a lot of the mid-size structures in here. We could probably increase this to a 0.75. And I'll just do this, 7. So much easier. Clip it just a little bit more. Okay, that is way better than what it was before. So you can see here that we've got a fairly good masking. I'll expand this out for you guys looking at home. So you can see here that we've got the star structure here all set. So that's pretty good. Now what I want to do is, here's a cool little trick. Now I don't know how many of you are really familiar with pixel math, but if you in pixel math when you're playing, we'll do a really quick tutorial here. Now in pixel math, you can set here in the equation, if you go 0, and if I were to take this and apply it, what do you think the result would be? Now I don't expect you to answer out loud. Just think about it to yourselves in your head. What do you think it would be? So I'll go ahead and generate the mask right now. It's an all black mask because we know that all images are going to be composed of between 0 through 255, 0 being the darkest, 255 being the brightest. But in this case, we're going to be using a binary expressions. If I set this to 1, what do you think the opposite is going to be? Let's do create image. It's going to be white, an all white image. Now what's really cool about this, you have the ability to use decimal places. If I want to do 0.25, I can generate a mask that is 0.25, which will give me a pretty dark mask here. So I learned this from someone else. I cannot absolutely take credit for how this mask is generated. I wish I could remember the name of the gentleman. He's a German gentleman who's very active on the PixInsight forums, and he is absolutely brilliant pixel math guru. When I remember his name, I'll be sure to post it to give him the correct credit for this work. Now, what I tend to do is, I know in his tutorials, he said he uses typically a 0.4. I don't use 0.4. I use around 0.5, maybe a 0.6, and I apply it to the image, and I create this new mask. And let's set this to mask down here, generate it. I know I could have just double-clicked, but that's just me. So we're going to start off with a base mask like this. So we have our initial star mask off to the left here. So we got star mask and our mask. Now what I can do is take these two. Now we could do a combination. We can do a subtraction. You can do this together. Whoops.
As you're typing that, is it Gerald Weschelberger?
That's who it is. Thank you so much. Yes,
I sent you a link about that. Yes, this is the link for his site. Great for that nebulosity thing.
Yeah, I actually learned an extra trick from him. It's funny because him and I use a similar process, the exponential transformation. I just square mine, whereas he actually expands the whole thing, and it was just pure coincidence. But his secondary part of that equation is brilliant. I never thought of that. But anyway, I apologize. Yeah, he's a really smart guy. Credit deserved. So what you can see here is the resulting, by subtracting the star mask from our mask, we get this new mask here. Now you can just call this done if you want to. There is an additional step that could be done if we really wanted to, but I'll give you guys an idea of what it can do. So let's apply this. Now, okay, so before I do that, think about what this mask is going to do. Now think for a second, well, what is this mask going to do? I subtracted the star mask from my original mask to create this new result, this new mask. So we know in Photoshop, black conceals, white reveals, right? And now I've got this gray background. So what do you think that's going to do to the background structure? What's it going to do to the stars? So let's go ahead and apply that. So as you can see, what it do? we can see that the stars are completely blocked out. Well, at least the larger stars. So the masks that we've created for the stars are completely blocked out. But you can see that there's a nice little red haze across the entire image. So if we're to bring up, say, let's go bring up histogram transformation. I won't bring up anything that is really processor intensive like LHE. Now, what we can do is we can just start sliding this over. Now, one of the things you'll notice right away, the stars, the larger stars that have been masked out haven't been, and I'll show you exactly what I was talking about when it comes to smoothness and artifacts that are being introduced. But what you can see here, the stars that are protected aren't getting bloated. They're not increasing in size. But what's going up in size is, or what's getting brighter, and we can just clip here if we wanted to. I know I'm clipping data, so please don't take this as, oh my gosh, I can't believe what he's doing. It's looking horrible, but I'm just trying to prove a point. Is that, and we can go back and forth here between the two. We can see that the stars remain the same size, at least the ones that have been protected, but the nebulosity itself has been enhanced. So in a standard luminance mask, what drives me absolutely insane, I won't swear on live TV, YouTube world, and let's eliminate this. I apologize. Let's do apply this temporary stretch. So let's look at the stars right here, are perfect examples. So here, now watch the brightness of the star and after. It didn't move. So what we were able to do is, in the luminance mask, when you create your luminance mask and you apply it to the image even after a stretch, the brightest objects are the ones that are supported by the greatest number of wavelet planes or wavelet layers, wavelet scales, whatever it is you want to call it, are the ones that are going to be left back and they're going to be exposed in the mask. It kind of bites because I tend to want to focus my stretches, my mask stretches such as this, on the nebulosity. I don't want to bloat the stars any further because we know that as we increase the luminosity, we start losing color saturation in that object, and it's so hard to get back. And it's it's the biggest mistake all newbies make, and I'm one of those newbies, and I still do it from time to time. But this is a great way of doing it. So by using pixel math, we can now start combining these masks together to form very, very specific masks if you wanted to. Now the other thing that we could have done, we can go one step further with this. You could use the minimum operator. Now I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with the minimum, the median, as well as the maximum operators in pixel math. What they do is they take the minimum represented value of that pixel across the entire image, and you can just apply it by one or to a single image like, oh, whoops, I apologize. I forgot a very important parameter, mask 1. You do something like this. And look at that. It's a black image. Big surprise, right? Because it took the utmost minimum value of your mask, and that's what it did. Well, we don't want that, right? And I can show you guys what the maximum does. Maximum to mask 1. Big surprise, it's gray. We knew that was going to be gray because if we were to highlight this image, and then if you go down here, and you take a look at this area down here, it's going to give you, oh sorry, my apologies, wrong side, right over here, the K value, it's going to give you an idea of the image itself. So we know that the maximum value here, or the pixel value, is going to be 0.5. Now what you want to do is, you could take this one step further, so you can do minimum, and you can do a combination of two images now. So we could do mask 1, and you separate, and it's just comma separated values here, mask 1, and then you also do star mask. Oh, nope, I am a dink. There's that whole not swearing thing. C, V, and then add the mask. And then apply this, and make sure we disable the mask so we're not completely messing with stuff. Take this, drag it over. And this is a mask that was generated by that value. And as you can see here, look what it did. It exposed the nebulosity. Now it's that much better. So the mask before, it covered the entire background, whereas now it's going to give us the ability, it's protecting, of course, the redder areas, and it's exposing the lighter areas to a different, a much lighter mask, or a much smoother mask.
Hey, this is Sean. Can I ask a question really quick?
Absolutely, man.
I just want to make sure I have a clearer understanding of this.
Sure, shoot.
So when you just generate your mask for your stars, and it's all black in the background, and you do a stretch, you're going to stretch everything but the masked out stars. And I think I understand that process pretty well.
Mhm.
And they're all white, and they're fuzzy and sort of blurred out so that you don't have the harsh transition from the star to what you don't have masked out. And
Mhm.
I get that. But so the background, you have actually generated a mask that not only has the stars masked out, but is it masking out some of the brightest nebulosity, that one that has the gray background? Is that the goal?
Yes. Yes,
So that
it does.
when you do your stretch, you're not only masking the stars, but you're also masking the brighter nebulosity. Is that
Exactly. So when you're taking a look at my images, now some people have asked, or have stated that, if you're looking at this particular image, have stated, wow, there's like a really neat 3D structure. Well, you guys just saw my little trick and how I do it, my secret's out. So what I do is I generate a lot of different masks, and I mask out different areas. Now, this is going to go so well beyond the scope of this presentation, but with Pixel Math, I can create a mask that says, only mask out this area right here. You can do that. The equation is absolutely insane. I didn't discover it. They do have some, they did, I should say, they had the example posted in the Pixel Math tutorial that was found on PixInsight's website, and it has been removed ever since they changed it, which is really annoying. I wish I had kept it. But that's basically how you could do targeted. So instead of, a lot of people will go into Photoshop, and you can create a nice simple mask, right? You could just duplicate your layer, and then you can make the adjustments to that layer. Then you can create a mask. Then you can paint over it. You can brush it in, then you can feather and smooth it out. Then you can combine it. You've got your new image, and you've got this feathered out area. You could do the same thing with Pixel Math as well. And that's what I do to bring out, some of these structures here to stand out higher from everything else, to try to make it look 3D. It looks 3D on my monitor, so if it doesn't look like that on yours, get a new monitor. I wish it was that easy. At least on my monitor here, it does look like it's 3D-ish. I'm going to blame everybody else for my lack of processing skill. So that's how I do it, and that's how I target it. So I can block out the stars, not bloat my stars, not bring up the background, not bring up the noise, and focus my efforts on these scales here. So like this one here in particular, I really wanted this region to stand out and make it look like it was hovering above and that you were falling into an area down here. I can see it on my monitor, but that's my goal every single time, is when I'm working on these large mosaics, is that I want to give them 3D point of view. And you can do that by making slight adjustments. So by creating these masks and then making adjustments to that mask using either the histogram transformation tool or local histogram equalization or your curves layer. So you can create more or less contrast in those areas if you wanted to. So does that answer your question, Sean? I did pontificate a little bit further, and I went beyond the scope of your question, but I hope that helps.
No, that's great. I had never even thought to do that. That's awesome.
Yeah, so you can see here that as I start to bring it up, now one of the things you want to pay close attention to, and I'm exaggerating this massively, is how is your mask reacting? So is your star mask any good? So you can see here as I'm making adjustments to that area, I'm really highlighting some of that. Now, one of the things, and of course I can't be stressful enough, is that because the mask has a value of 0.5, it's not going to provide full protection to the entire area. So a lot of the surrounding area, remember, the redder it is, the more protection is going to be applied, the less that this particular process is going to be applied to the image as a whole. And the areas that have less red, or that are going to be more exposed, and in the end will receive more of the process applied to it. So I want to make sure, so if you're looking at this and going, well, I'm still seeing changes, well, of course you are. But you have to note the intensity of the change as it relates to the surrounding signal. So you got to pay attention to that. Now, one of the things that, and I touched upon this earlier, so let's go back here, and, oh, whoops, want Control 0, let's make this big, let's turn the mask off. Now, let's do this, let's apply this. Now, remember what I had talked about earlier regarding the, you can create artifacts by having too little smoothness or too much smoothness? Here's a perfect example. Do you guys see that ringing artifact? And I hope you guys can.
Yeah, like a dark halo?
Exactly, yes. There's that dark halo that's surrounding the star. That is a result of this craptastic mask right here. So you can see that it's a little too large, it's a little too hard, and that's the result.
Not
So
enough smoothness, correct?
Exactly. So what do I want to do to protect this? Increase the smoothness. But now you're going to have an entirely different issue. Now this is where pixel math comes in, and the genius of some of the expert imagers that were out there. So now if I have a mask that has too much smoothness, I'm going to have the opposite effect. So what's going to happen to the star, and this is an open question, what's going to happen to the star if I have too much smoothness now? So by increasing the smoothness, what's going to be the result of my curves when applied to this image? And what's the result of the star? I hope that made sense. I apologize. So with the increase of the smoothness, what is going to be the resulting, what will be the result to the star? So we increase the smoothness, we apply it to the mask, or to the image as a mask. So instead of getting a halo, what do you think what would happen?
Would it be too fuzzy?
Well, if I have less protection against the star, and as I increase the illumination on that star,
it'll blow. It'll end up bloating and getting brighter.
Exactly. Yeah, it's going to get bigger. It's going to blow. And then when we try to add color and trying to regain that color, what's going to happen? No color. Or little color. I shouldn't say no, depending on the amount of bloat that we get. So this is one of those things that I talked about, and this is great that we see this, because depending, and of course, this is take a look at this curve, it's a little bit exaggerated here. It's not something that I would typically ever do this much. I think this is way too much. So we can go back and we can just make adjustments to smoothness. Now, going back to my point about what the grates do, well, you can start combining different masks. Now, last week what I did was I generated 2 different masks, and then I used the convolution process just to play with it. So you could do that as well. So you use the convolution process to oh my gosh, I lost my train of thought. To increase or decrease the strength of that mask against the star. So rather than using the smoothness function, you can then use the convolution function to convolute your mask to increase how or decrease how that mask is going to be applied to those stellar objects in your image. Any questions regarding this so far? Because we are over an hour now, and that tends to happen with these kind of presentations, because I could probably speak for another hour regarding masks and everything else. So,
Hytham, my only question, and if you want to take this at the end, it's perfectly fine with me, but how much of your stretching is done in masks? And,
the majority of it is. So if we go back to my image here, this entire image, I do very localized stretching and masking in PixInsight. Because, as I said earlier, I tend to do an initial stretch, a very, very light stretch, and I learned it from, oh man, I hate name dropping, but and I have to give credit from where I learned a lot of this stuff from was, I want to say it was Ken Crawford and Adam Block, because they both specify in tutorials that are found on their websites that you don't want to stretch the image so it looks finished, because that was one of the very first mistakes that I'd always made, was that I would stretch the image out to try to finish the luminance and then try to apply it, and I would always wonder what happened to my color, why can't I balance right, where did all my star color go? So I tend to do a very low level initial stretch first in histogram, and then from there I bring in LAG is the next step. Then I use a local histogram equalization to bring up some of the structure, to get it to stand up above the sky background, I guess you can call it that in this case, because I wanted the extended nebulosity to stand up above the background, so we get that nice 3D effect that pops out. From there, what I start doing is start to mask off areas that I'm interested in. So a lot of these lighter regions down here, what I do is I start masking them off, because there's not a whole lot of signal. So I mask them off, and then I start using, curves transformation with it masked off, curves transformation, histogram, LHE, or a combination of all 3 to start bringing up this structure without bringing up the noise in the background. That's why I don't use any.
So you're not, when you say you're masking out that certain area, like the lower left corner,
Yep.
but you're using a mask that is applied to the entire image. Is that correct? Or only that area?
It's going to be applied, so what it does is when I say I mask it off, I should say I'm exposing it. So I'm masking off the remaining part of the image. So if we're talking about, I'll just, I'll use Alt-N here as an example. So let's say this is my area that I'm masking off, right? I can expose anything below that box out. So you could do that in pixel math. The equation is unbelievably long to do so. And like I said, it's beyond the scope of this, and it was available, and I learned it. Again, I can't take credit because I'm not some savant of any sort. But I did learn it out of the pixel math documentation. It was all there, and I wish they had it back up again because it was an invaluable source. But you can, in pixel math, you can say, I want to mask off, block out that entire region, but I only want to expose the lower left-hand corners in here.
So my question is, do you run into problems then that it doesn't look, the background and everything doesn't look the same as the rest of the image?
Yeah, so what I end up doing is, so this is where a combination of tools comes into play, because I know how to mask off corners and I know how to increase the corner size itself. So I know how to create a mask that covers this area, exposes this area. But if you were to ask me, oh, Hytham, how do you expose just this area? Well, the equation becomes that much more complex and difficult, and then that's when you go into things like Photoshop. So when you drag it into Photoshop, you can create a duplicate of the image. And you know what? Here, let me just open up my Photoshop instance. And if you guys can't see it, and I know you won't be able to, so let me share that as well. You know what? I'm just going to share my bloody desktop. If it lets me do it. Screen share. Nope, it's not.
Now, my question then, is there a possibility for you, since you're saying that documentation is gone, is there a possibility of you either doing a tutorial or something like that? Because I would be very interested in learning how to do what you're referring to.
Yeah, absolutely. I can definitely write up a tutorial. It's one of those things that I definitely want to bring up. And I'm going to work with the guys, or with, what's his name? Gerard?
Yeah,
Gerald.
Gerald.
Yeah, Gerard. Is it Gerald?
Yeah, I do believe so on his website. He has
It's either Gerald or Gerard. I can't remember his name, but the German genius. I'll just refer to him as that. The German genius. He has the equation in one of his pixel math tutorials. If you guys have ever watched it, it is unbelievable. It is better than any of the pixel math tutorials that were released by the Pi guys themselves. They're very long, and it takes a little bit to go through. And you did say, Robert, you said you posted it up in the comment section, correct?
Oh, he has it under the expert user part, probably in there, right?
Yeah, so he's got it under advanced in the English side, but then he's got expert in German. So if you guys can speak German, it's in there as well.
Well, he's got expert English now too.
Oh, does he? Okay, excellent. I haven't looked at his site in a while. But yeah, he definitely helped me get started on the pixel math run. But so can you guys see Photoshop when I bring it up?
Yeah.
Okay, great. So in Photoshop, what you could do is something like that. So I duplicate a layer by using Control-J. Now, if I wanted to do not necessarily like HDR toning, but you could do HDR toning. Let's just do something simpler because HDR toning won't let me do it if I'm going into a layer. So let's go to where to go? Am I retarded? Other high pass. There we go. So we have high pass. We'll just leave it to, we'll bring it down to about 5 pixels, close that off. And then we do an Alt and then click on this little icon. Now we have a reveal mask set. And we can zoom in. Now if I bring up my brush, and let's increase the size of the brush here. You don't want to do that. Set that to overlay, and here we go. So mask out that area or brush it out. And you can see that it's sharpened. I'm not sure if you guys can see it, but what it did was it sharpened out this entire area, right? And you can blink back and forth to see the changes. So this is something that I typically wouldn't do like that because you're including so many stars and you end up sharpening the stars, you end up brightening the stars. That's the last thing you want to do, especially when you're working in images that have a high degree of nebulosity, and that's what you want to focus on. But here's the interesting part. So if we go here, right click, select refine mask, and what the heck? There we go. Set that to overlay. So you can see my area that I'm now exposing. And you can just do a simple feather, smoothen out. And you can even define the contrast here just a slight bit. Select OK. And there we go, boom, done. and we can just blink back and forth, and we can see the differences here between the two. So that's one way you can do it. You can also use the lasso tool if you wanted to, and you can just lasso off this area. This is another trick that I like to do in Photoshop. If people say this is cheating, I really don't care, because this is about aesthetics and art, so get over it.
Cheater!
So what you could do here is, now that I'm applying this, and you can see what I'm doing, right? I start clipping the blacks. One of the things that you'll notice is you start doing localized areas like this with masks in Photoshop, you can start focusing. You can see that there's still a lot of room to clip out. You can still remove a lot of data. And you can also enhance it a little bit. And just as an example, here's the before, here's the after, before, the after. Of course, this is not the greatest. I'm just rushing through this because we are so well past time.
Sure, you'd want to feather that a lot or something, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So you leave it like that, and then you can just go back to the refine mask again. You just go feather, nice high feather, smoothen the mask a little bit here, select OK, and you can just blink back and forth here, and you can see that it's a pretty nice effect, and it renders like a 3D-like effect for the image itself. So that's the Photoshop way of doing it. And I hate it when the PixInsight purists say, well, there's no need to go into Photoshop. I call BS. I think if you can call on both tools, you can do a lot of great things with that.
It's just more complicated in PixInsight, right?
Yeah, and if you use the term complicated with those guys, they tend to get really offended. And again, because they're very scientifically purist-based, and I understand, I totally understand the point of view that they're coming from, but they also have to understand that not every one of
so maybe it's not more complicated, it just requires more steps and more skill.
Yeah, I guess you could say that's a nice euphemism. But so that's one way of doing it. So to the long-winded answer for Adam, yeah, I tend to mask out parts of my image and highlight them. Here's a perfect. This was just a simple layering in with a masking of that image, and then what I did was I applied a small unsharp mask so that way I can focus on that data. And I could have just done it before, and I could have brought it out, but yeah, I did this after the application into the larger image itself, so that way it would stand out in the rest of the image. So any other questions that we have here, or does someone have an image they want to play with, or I don't know how much time everyone else has, but you know, I don't have kids or anything else to worry about, or a dog, so I'm here. Is there anything else that you guys would like to see? Is there anything else that you guys would like to?
I think, Mike, I just heard you say I'm here. Mike, try talking.
Or is he muted out? No, he's not muted.
He's not muted. I think he's trying to talk, but we can't hear him for one reason or another. I don't know why.
How does Canadian dink translate to US English? One of my favorite things that I like to say around the office is dink touch, and that was something from one of my old rugby coaches back in Canada, or the nipple, he would call us. But anyway, I can't hear you at all, Mike.
Okay.
Oh, there we go.
There we go.
Okay, sorry, I had to change the settings. I haven't had the headset hooked up in a while. I was going to reiterate on your point a couple of minor things.
Sure.
One, I will tell you that Crawford sits with a Wacom board and will spend weeks highlighting with a high-pass mask just real tiny areas in Photoshop. I mean, he's just anal about it. He's unreal. The other thing I was going to say is I'm helping Warren Keller with the tutorial in Pix right now on narrowband processing. And I had to do a write-up and stuff, and he's doing the professional stuff. But the one thing that I was not allowed to do in any part of my demonstration for him and the data was to use Photoshop. Rogelio said, no Photoshop. So even though if I could do some better enhancements in Photoshop, it was absolutely not allowed.
Yep. Yeah, that's I know, because what's funny about Rogelio, I shouldn't say what's funny about him, because the guy is obviously super super talented. But in his early iterations or revisions, he did use a combination of PixInsight and Photoshop, but I would understand for the purpose of a PixInsight tutorial that, yeah, we wouldn't want to carry it in
Well,
Photoshop.
Ken called me about a month ago, and he was asking me about using, because he had never used PixInsight, and he was trying to figure out how to use DBE, and he was going nuts because he said, I can't see any change. And
That's
I said,
another
now,
tutorial
Ken,
I want to do.
Ken, did you not sit through the presentation at AIC where he showed how to use DBE? And no, I was too busy.
Yeah, a lot of that localized stuff is just taking a step back. I did contact Jimmy Walker a little while ago because we all know how unbelievably awesome understatement of the century he is when it comes to processing. And I just asked him, is this cheating? And he said, I do it all the time. The localized stuff, just by lassoing it out.
Jimmy was at my house last year. Jimmy and I are real good friends. And we talk almost every day and compare images and work together on a lot of this stuff. And if you ever watched him process, you would absolutely go nuts. He whips through an image so fast. He's got just a natural whack, but he'll just start lassoing areas and playing with shadows and highlights and just boom, 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 oh, this is enough, boom, boom, it's just like it's just amazing. I could never do that. I don't have that kind of insight to see that kind of stuff like he does.
Go ahead,
Does he
Adam.
work in PixInsight or Photoshop?
He
Or
does
both?
both.
He's working mostly in Photoshop. I've taught him a lot of stuff in PixInsight because he's so busy, and Jimmy's the kind of guy that if he sees it once, he gets it really well, but to get Jimmy to sit down and watch a tutorial, forget it. He doesn't have the patience for it.
I'm the exact same way. When I'm watching tutorials, I just can't. I have to either have a mentor. I'd rather experiment and figure it out, where a lot of the stuff that I do in PixInsight is experimentation, and then you come across, like I said in the beginner and intermediate forum on Cloudy Nights, was that I'm always playing catch-up. Every time I think I've discovered something new, one of the experts out there has done it for the last 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years even, and better. A perfect example is my presentation regarding enhancing large-scale structure. When I first discovered, I thought I had discovered it. It turned out Rogelio had already done it, and it was on his website in 2010 and 11. But then, more research when I was looking at ways of enhancing it, Vicente Peris from the PixInsight team had done it in 2003 already.
Yeah.
So I always think I'm thinking of something new, and I'm just thinking of something that's already been thought of and it's already been improved upon.
Yeah, it's hard. I think the hardest tutorials to watch, but one of the most intelligent people, Adam Block, is, when he starts to go into theory and bringing up the spreadsheets and stuff, I start falling asleep. But but the guy knows what he's doing.
Yeah.
But yeah, Jimmy has learned most of his stuff through experimentation and just picking up bits and pieces. I showed him the trick of using an overlay mask to enhance structure, for example.
Yep.
And then he just took off with it. But so he'll watch for 5 minutes and pick something up, play with it, and then put his own twist on it.
Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. Considering how talented he is at golf, that usually translates into being talented in other arenas as well. So just as a quick aside, what I did was I just took a look at your posted image that you had done to Dropbox and that filamentary data. I can definitely see what you're talking about. So in that case, what I would do, you could potentially do a couple of different things here. Now, you could take it into @true wavelets, what I would guess, and you could probably disable some of the larger scale structure, but you would have to be careful because you might end up destroying some of the stars. I would do shadows and midtone and just clip that out a little bit more.
Well, this is far better than the last one was, and that's because I'm still I got to say I'm still just I would say a beginner to intermediate in Pix. I'm learning, but this is far better, and I was just using a default set of icons that Keller made for me a couple of years ago.
Oh, okay.
He had the default set at 8 on the layers, and this is a result of once I switched it to 5, and a huge amount of it disappeared. But why I'm so interested in this and making the star mask is I do a lot of combination of RGB and narrowband.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm trying to get to my biggest problem I run into is halos at times, because my HA data has a tendency to be really, really strong because I collect so much of it. So, but I want to get a better blending method, and so I really had to start learning this and working on it when I was helping Warren with the script. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out. Right now, what I'm doing is I'm taking that into Photoshop, and I'll paint that area out.
Oh, okay.
But that's
so
not
with
the
this
right way
one,
to do it.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there at the end, but with this particular one, so that process icon that Warren gave you, does it also include a clipping on the shadows and the midtones at all, or is it he's leaving that the default of 0 and 0.5 and then just with a scale of
Let me look.
8? Yeah, that would be great.
Let's see. He's got the shadows at 0.5, midtones at 0.5, and highlights at 1.
So what I would do is bump that up to like 0.75, maybe even 0.7, and that should clip it out further. And because that's going to leave the stars alone, because there's so much data in the stars that they will remain there. Some of the smaller stars will disappear. But then you can just adjust your star mask by either you could binarize the star mask at that point if you wanted to, so that way we'll give an equal weight to every single one of the stars, so that way they all have the same 255 value across the board. And then you can just adjust the strength by using the smoothness function and then just clip the shadows and the midtones higher. I would give that a shot. I bet that would eliminate the rest of it without eliminating, if your focus is wanting to keep all the stars that you have here in the star mask.
Primarily because I'm trying to overwrite the narrowband stars.
Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, so that's what I would end up doing is then just binarize it, so that way it's all set to 255, and then increase your shadows and your midtones beyond 0.5, and then leave your scales around 5, 6-ish. Yeah. And then that would do it, I bet.
I'm trying it as we're speaking.
Good, perfect. Yeah, that's fine by me. And actually, you know what you can do if you wanted to? You could share your desktop so we can all see what you're doing.
Okay, now that made a huge difference. I went to shadows and midtones at 0.7, and there's almost none of it left at this point.
Awesome. But you didn't binarize it, or did you binarize it?
I did not.
Okay, so if you didn't binarize it, what it's going to do then is it would probably, you may have clipped out some of those smaller stars that are not as bright as the larger stars, but if you don't care about that, then great. Because I tend to focus on the large stars now. And this is me still learning because it's only been a year for me for processing, but what I've started to do is I've always wanted to highlight the larger stars with color, and then the lower stars in the background I haven't cared so much about. I don't know. But if your focus is across the board, my scientific thought would be, yeah, binarize it and leave it alone that way, and then just set your shadows and your midtones. Now the other thing,
the binarize brought more of it in.
Did it really?
Mm-hmm.
And that was with you set to 0.7?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, probably increase that then to 0.85, 0.9 possibly. And you have your scale set to 5, or did you say it was 8? Because you're using Warren's default?
No, I moved it to 5.
Oh, okay, cool.
Mike, I just wanted to let you know that if you wanted to, you can click over on the left side of your screen and click Screen Share, and then we can actually see your screen if you choose to. There are some nuances to how it's displayed, but
Capture, Control Room, YouTube.
Green arrow, Screen Share.
Oh, green arrow.
Yeah, it's like a green screen with a white arrow. And then if you click on that, it'll bring up a screen share for you. And then you can just select your desktop.
Okay, I did that.
There we go. All right, we're seeing your screen.
Oh, that's interesting. So I can't see his screen. That's really weird. Can you guys see his screen?
I can see his screen.
You got to click on his image. Or
yeah,
click
I
on
did.
His name.
Yeah, I did that, and I'm not seeing it at all.
Maybe because his PixInsight process is running. We'll see if it picks back up. I still do see a screen. Do you do the rest
that
of it?
worked.
Sorry, what's that, Mike? It worked?
Perfect.
Yeah,
Perfect.
wicked.
There we go.
Well, I'm glad you guys can see his screen. It's funny because if I click on one of your names down below, I can see his screen in the little icon, but if as soon as I click his name, I'm not seeing it at all. But whatever, as long as it works.
No, that worked. That by bringing the shadows and midtones up, that worked great.
Okay, awesome. Sweet.
And you taught me something else really good that I like to do a lot of times that I haven't been able to figure out how to do in Photoshop, and that was to make an inverse of the star mask. So I never even noticed that on the screen before.
Yeah, so you could do the inverse of the star mask. The other thing this is something I figured out on my own, but I wish I knew how to do it, was that if I save my star mask in PixInsight here as a 16-bit TIFF file, I can then import it into Photoshop. But I have no idea how to do it in Photoshop. I don't know how to carry that mask in there. I thought that's got to be possible somehow. But
to save your mask? Or do you just save it as a TIFF?
Yeah, I save it as a 16-bit TIFF, but I don't know how to apply it in Photoshop as a mask. That is not something I know how to do because I'm not adept at Photoshop.
Well, it's really easy. You just make another layer.
Mm-hmm.
I wish you could see my screen. I'd show you.
Why is yours not showing up?
All right.
Because I'm clicking on everyone's name and it's not letting me see their screens, and I'm wondering if.
All right, so I'm going to bring up an image that I was just working on.
So Adam, are you able to stop the live broadcast and just?
I am able to stop the live broadcast. Do you want me to stop it now, and we'll?
Do we have anyone from YouTube watching? I don't think we do.
Actually, yes. You know what? There's one YouTube viewer, so I'm going to.
Okay. All right. Cool. We'll just go ahead and leave it then, so they can listen in. I don't want to.
All right. So what I'm doing is I've got the main image open, and let's say typically I wanted to add a star mask just to bring RGB color in.
Mm-hmm.
I would put the layer on top. In this case, I'm just duplicating. And then down below, there's the little mask button called Add a Layer Mask. I add that on.
Mm-hmm.
I Alt-click into that.
Yep.
Okay.
And it should make it all white?
Right. And then I take the star mask, Control-A, Control-C.
Oh, no shite. That's all it takes. All right.
Control-V, there's the mask.
All right. I'm such a tool shed. All right, that's cool. That's really simple. See, and now you've got your star mask in Photoshop, guys. So if you have both PixInsight and Photoshop, that's how you do it. Because it drove me nuts when I was using, what's his name? JP Matsuvayano's tone mapping technique. And he was talking about like star reduction and highlighting the stars using all the weird dust and scratches stuff and adjusting the pixel size and the threshold. It drove me nuts, and I thought, can't I just create a star mask, put it in, and then just apply the dust and scratches that way? It'd be so much easier. But anyhow, that is really cool. Okay.
There's a better Warren shared with me the other day. There's a program called Stratton, S-T-A.
Oh, yep.
And it will remove all of the stars. But I'm still learning it, playing with it.
Cool.
But it's
I heard about it, but I haven't used it.
It was $23.
Oh, yeah, it sounds like it's worth it.
Cool. Did we lose Mike?
No.
No, I'm still here.
Okay. Oh, I saw myself in your picture. You're still sharing your screen. Not that matters. But
how do I turn it off?
You do you have your equipment at New Mexico Skies?
Yes.
Yeah.
Son of a gun. Do you have your own dome, or are you on a shared roll-off?
No, I can't afford a dome like Jimmy.
Is that around $2,500 a month?
A dome is $2,000 a month. Actually, he just signed a second endorsement deal with Celestron last Wednesday, so New Mexico Skies isn't costing him anything.
Oh, man.
They just sent him a new one of their
As if
new
he couldn't afford it.
well, we won't go there. That's not our
No, absolutely not. No, I'm just saying that because I'm unbelievably jealous, just ridiculously jealous.
Oh, well,
I
I
wish I was good
cannot.
at golf.
I cannot say how much Celestron gave him. That's
No,
confidential.
I don't
but,
want to know. I don't want to know.
Yeah, but it would make you sick.
Good for the hobby.
Good for him.
Yeah.
I mean, seriously, good for him. I'm jealous in a very happy
And I'm
way
bad
for him.
about bad about promoting him. But I do that, one, because it's not proper for him to promote himself, but two, he has a lot of public visibility, and he's getting a lot of younger people
Yeah.
interested in the hobby.
Absolutely. No, that's great. I'm
And
still unbelievably jealous.
My-
That's so great.
My passion is trying to get U.S. kids involved in math and science, and I think astrophotography is a real key way to get them to take interest in physics and things around them. And I think he could be really key in helping to foster that. But
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree 100%. Math and science is so critical, and it's faltering here big time. We need more of it. No, I'm all for it. That's for sure.
when I'm at him with tournaments, kids are coming up wanting to get his autograph and stuff, and I start talking to him about his hobby and giving him his website.
Mm-hmm. Man,
That's
so he's
cool.
endorsed by Celestron now. Wicked.
And he has been for over a year.
That I had a feeling, but I didn't know officially just because he was getting Celestron equipment and he was always playing with it.
Well, he put a logo on his bag. They embroidered a logo on his bag, and then he has to produce 3 images a year.
From their equipment.
Well, the one thing they don't say is that he's not using their mount.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because he's not. I shouldn't have said that. Shit.
It doesn't matter. The optics are all Celestron.
Okay,
The
perfect.
camera is Celestron.
The optics are the most important thing. The mount has nothing to do with it, right?
Yeah.
Probably shouldn't laugh after we say something like that either.
Well, wait a minute.
Adam, you can edit this, right?
Yeah, you know what? I'll chop this out.
If you really would, please, because Jimmy would probably be very unhappy if he heard any of this.
I will. It's going to take 24 hours, but I'll chop it out.
Okay, well, he's on a plane back from England right now, so
Perfect.
we got time.
Sorry, Jimmy. So let's go back. So are there any questions regarding the masks or anything else? Is there anything else that you guys would like to see? Is there anything that you'd like to troubleshoot or have a look at? Because we got Mike sorted out, so we know exactly what it was. It was just a matter of doing a binarize on there to retain his stars and then just increase the shadows and midtones and decrease the scale. So is there anything else that anyone would like to see or explained a little bit better? We're running into 2.5 hour territory now at this point. Or 2 hours.
Yeah, closer to it.
Hey, thanks. I really appreciate it.
No, it's no problem. So, like, we can expand on this more later on because I do have so much more that we can definitely cover as it comes to masks. Because we could definitely go over some more pixel math equations when it comes to masking. I would put that into possibly, like really easy territory. I wouldn't say really easy, but intermediate to advanced that we could cover. Because one of the things that I really wanted to cover was you can create like inverted masks like this, like that, just by using a pixel math equation. So now we've exposed the background. So it's an inverse luminance mask. That's just one way of doing it in pixel math, but little things like that.
It was neat that that type of mask, how you did the 25% and then added it to the stars to be able to get it. I didn't see it. I've never seen that type of mask before. So I've seen Gerald's mask that he does through the pixel math to be able to enhance the nebulosity. That's what I've always used.
Yeah, and I think I learned this one from the German genius as well. I'm pretty sure that's where I learned it from. I'm definitely going to give him credit for a lot of my pixel math abilities because he has incredible tutorials on his website.
Yeah, he does.
So anything else? I guess we can stop the live broadcast, and if you want to stay on, we can just stay on and talk crap or other stuff.
Yeah, as long as the recording stops, I don't want to get in any more trouble.
No, same